Right now, switch your family to T-Mobile and get 4 lines for $25 a line with AutoPay and 5G access included on America's largest 5G network. So don't wait. Get unlimited and nationwide 5G access for the whole family for just $25 a line. Visit a T-Mobile store or T-Mobile.com today.
Plus taxes and fees. Customers may notice lower speeds and further reduction if using over 50 gigs a month due to data prioritization. Video at 480p. Unlimited while on our network. Qualifying credit and 4+ lines required. Capable device required for 5G. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain features. See T-Mobile.com.
What's going on, folks? Thanks for hitting that download button and checking out a brand new episode of Toys and Tech of the Trade, your one-stop shop for toys, tech, and talk with some assembly required. I'm your host, Rich, and if this is your first time checking out an episode, first of all, welcome. Second, a bit about what we do here. Toys and Tech of the Trade is an interview series where we share the gadgets, the gear, and the tech that creators, entrepreneurs, and just awesome folks on our radar use to run their businesses, create their content, and just be more productive. When it comes to toys, we like to discuss more than the usual action figures, statues, or things of that nature. You'd be surprised what people consider their toys, whether it's something like collecting guitar picks to still collecting Beanie Babies. You'd be surprised what people obsess and collect and consider their toys. And we like to mix that in with our business talk and our entrepreneurship talk because it just lets us have cooler conversations and, most importantly, more human conversations than just the usual stuff. Before we get into this week's guest, I did want to just address a couple of housekeeping things. Toys and Tech of the Trade is back to a bi-weekly schedule, so expect a brand new episode every 2 weeks as usual. We got a lot of great guests on the horizon from different facets of entertainment, content creation, entrepreneurship, and we look forward to sharing their stories with you in the coming weeks and months. In addition to that, I want to thank everybody who's been so welcoming of our brand new show on the Rageworks Network, which is Trek Untold, hosted by Matt Kaplowitz from Nerd News Today. A lot of great Trekkies out there, man, that either have already been consuming our content or are joining our audience now. I want to thank everybody for the support that Matt has got on behalf of Rageworks. Lots of great interviews on deck when it comes to Trek Untold, and look for new episodes every week, usually on Thursdays. And as always, you can check out some of our other shows, including Call Me When It's Over, which comes out every Saturday, and Turnbuckle Tabloid, which comes out every weekend, usually either Saturday or Sunday, sometimes Monday, depending on what's been going on in the wrestling business. So definitely keep an eye out for those shows. Airing weekly and bi-weekly in some cases. For those asking, Black is the New Black has been on hiatus for a little bit. Ben and Taylor obviously dealing with what's been going on with COVID-19, social distancing, etc. But be on the lookout for new episodes of Black is the New Black in the near future. With all the housekeeping out of the way, let's get to this week's guest. My guest for this episode is Sean Kneese. Sean is a content creator, actor, and podcaster who hosts the show BSing with Sean K. We're going to get into the origin story in regards to his acting career, as well as his podcast BSing with Sean K, plus much, much more. Let's turn it over to Sean and learn about the toys and tech of his trade. My guest for this week's episode of Toys and Tech of the Trade is Sean Kneese. This multi-talented, versatile podcaster, content creator, and actor took time out of his schedule to sit down and chop it up with us. And we're going to learn about the toys and tech of his trade when it comes to creating content, acting, and just being a force in the podcasting industry. Sean, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to sit down with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
So before we started recording, we had talked about how we connected face-to-face in a podcast meetup group. And at the time, I think you were well on your way to starting your podcast BSing with Sean K, or you were a few episodes in already at the time. I want to say that was probably 2013 or so that we did that meetup.
Yeah, that was like in the early years of the show when I had done like a good amount. I think I was on like episode 37 or so at that time. I think maybe that was like more like 2015. But that was when I was still kind of finding my voice for the show. It's evolved a lot since then.
Yeah, it definitely has. I know that when you got the ball rolling, your intention was to interview different people who are just pursuing their creative and intellectual passions. And I thought that, it was just a great way to kick things off. But the show kind of organically pivoted on its own based on the people you have. And I wanted to kind of get into that, like, what made you want to start your podcast and dip your toes into that interviewing pool, like so many other podcasters, but in yours, letting it just grow organically into something different?
Well, one of the things was taking a feature writing, I was taking some journalism classes in undergrad, and I liked doing the feature stories where I'd interview people and it was more like feature articles I wrote, like where I interviewed Dr. Norma Bowe, who was a professor at my college that taught this death class called Death in Perspective, where it was about like teaching people to accept death as a part of life. She'd take them on trips to to cemeteries, to morgues, and other things like that. So I wrote a feature article on her, and at my time, my major was actually film, but I really liked like asking the questions and bringing her out. And another thing, I was also listening to a lot of podcasts, like Joe Rogan Experience was one of the main ones, and WTF with Mark Maron. And I liked how he was just talking to all these interesting people, and his show, like you hear like one person one week, and then like someone totally different. Like Joe Rogan, well, I guess they both do that. Like they both bring on like a wide variety. So I just wanted to start a show where I talk to a wide variety of people from different walks of life, but like have the style, I guess, of the interviewing that I do, kind of bring them together. And maybe like show the similarities they have too by showing all these different people. And at first I started with people I knew, friends, and then I just started reaching out to people on Instagram or emailing them or people I met at events. And I guess the way I just got a lot of guests is I just went for it and asked them. And it did kind of develop organically and intuitively. And it was only maybe the past few years that I was able to describe what it is, like put it more into words, what I'm doing with the show. And I guess it started more as like an intuitive thing, like you were saying.
Now, were you when you were trying to kind of develop the voice for the show, did you have an ideal audience you had in mind, or were you leveraging it based on people who you found that were cool or on your wavelength, and you said, you know what, if these are the people I like talking to, these are people whose stories people are going to want to hear? Was that the direction you took, or what was your kind of your plan for determining like your ideal listener when you got the ball rolling with the show?
I guess it was more the latter that you said. It was more finding people that I felt I had some kind of that I resonated with in some ways, that I was on the wavelength of in one way or another, even if they were someone I didn't like. Maybe I disagreed with them on some things, or what they did was different than what I do. Like there was some kind of commonality we could find in the conversation. And I guess I just wanted to make a show that like I would enjoy listening to, where I mentioned some of them, like Joe Rogan, Mark Maron, and I wanted to, I guess I figured if I wanted to make a show that like I'd enjoy, and if I enjoy shows like that, then there's obviously other people like me that would enjoy the same thing. So, and then over time I started thinking more like who I would reach, like maybe like people in entertainment or like the arts. But I think it varies. I mean, I've also had people with perspective on like political things, or just have a topic that they're very passionate about talking about.
What were the challenges for you with regards to that? I mean, you just mentioned something that's crucial in the sense of you bring on a guest, maybe you don't agree with them, and while you are using that commonality, how did you navigate like that type of a road where you'd have a guest on and maybe you didn't agree with their messaging on a certain item or a certain philosophy or ideology? How did you work around that, especially as you were just starting to build your show?
Well, I guess I would make sure I listen to like a lot of other interviews with the person and really feel the person out, like listen to how they interact with other people. Like, I guess make sure that there's someone that 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 I could deal with on a personal level, even if I don't necessarily like share the same view as them. But I feel like that was more as I went on. I started to do more of that, like as I got more comfortable interviewing people.
Did your studies help you in terms of just forming a format for your podcast? I know you went to Fordham University and you studied public media. Building out that type of a niche, especially with the way you wanted to present your show, did things like that come in handy? Your background, your studies at Fordham. I also know you do improv. Did that help you just become a better podcaster, or just come out of the gate a little bit more seasoned than everybody else?
Yeah, and it also like on the technical side, like for interviewing people in person, like using the iOS clip-on mic I have, and like renting out spaces, and also just like ways of presenting, like marketing my show, I learned a little bit about, and also just using I used a lot of the techniques, and like recently I interviewed one of my professors that was at CBS too, so it's also it was good for network. It definitely helped me improve like with my craft and everything. So,
well, you were mentioning about interviewing people on location. Is that something you're doing more frequently now? I mean, minus the whole coronavirus situation, do you feel more comfortable doing interviews in person because it allows you to just have a better connection?
Yeah. Before Corona, I was doing a lot more interviews in person. Like I'd take the train into the city, and usually I would rent out a place like at either 353 Studios or Simply Studios, where they have like these silent rooms, and I brought all the equipment with me, and it definitely added a lot to be there in person interviewing the person. Especially, it also made the interview more of an experience rather than just interviewing the person over Skype or. But now that Corona and everything, I've been going back to doing Zoom interviews or Skype interviews, and I mean it doesn't have the same in-person connection, but you can still get a good conversation and everything. So I guess I want to get back into that again once things open up again, because that really does add a lot.
How was your setup for recording remotely? Were you just using some microphones and your phone, or were you bringing like a dedicated recording rig, etc.?
For recording at home?
No, recording remotely.
Remotely, well, sometimes I actually I would record in two different ways in case one of them messed up.
Really? Okay.
Then I'd at least have the backup. Like I on my phone, I had the iOS mic where I clip on the mic on, like it would clip onto your shirt, and then I plug it in and I record it on the phone. And then I also brought my laptop, and I had this Blue Yeti microphone, which has a omnidirectional option you can choose. Yep. And then if you sit around it, like it records everybody in the room. So
okay,
I recorded it those two ways, like so in case one it didn't work or there was something went wrong with it, I have a backup.
The iOS mic you were using, was that the iRig, the clip-on one?
I believe so. Yeah, it was like I don't know where it is right now, but it was like the iOS clip-on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now at home, obviously your setup is definitely more involved. I'm sure you're just running you're running Mac or Windows?
Windows.
Okay.
Windows, but
are you doing like a lot of us like a lot of us that are podcasting using good old Audacity, or are you using a different workflow?
I've been using Audacity. I thought about like using another program, but then I saw when I went on that tour of CBS, I saw even a CBS for like the podcasts that record there. They use Audacity.
Really?
I mean, I have yeah, which I thought was interesting when I saw it, because I would have thought they'd use Pro Tools for that.
Yep.
I know when I took the class at WNYC, they wanted us to use more Pro Tools. I mean, maybe eventually I'll use Pro, but I mean, for podcasting, Audacity's been fine. I mean, I have a pretty good mic. I use the Blue Yeti, and I have a program for recording Skype calls.
Very nice. Yeah, the Blue Yeti was one of my first mics. It was a workhorse and a half. I definitely honed my chops quite a bit, and I still use Audacity for editing and ID3 tagging for podcasts, because nobody can beat that, and it's just so intuitive. I mean, I moved to a different software now, but Audacity still gets a lot of play. Now,
what one do you use now?
I am
how does it compare?
Oh, the software wise, I'm using Hindenburg Journalist, which is a little bit more money, but the learning curve is ridiculously simple, and it includes a lot of just ancillary plugins that sometimes you got to pay extra for. Like you can, for instance, you can build a voice profile. So let's say you record your voice profile, and let's say you do a podcast a few weeks later, and you have, let's say, a cold or your allergies are acting up, and you sound a little nasally. What you would do is you can actually load that profile, and it would make your voice sound how it would normally sound.
Nice,
which is pretty cool.
Nice. It's kind of like auto-tune. So it's kind of like an auto-tuning kind of thing for podcasting.
Yeah, it has that. It also has different auto leveling to make sure everybody's audio is level. Excuse me. And the other thing that they do, which I like, is that you can actually export in -16 LUFS, which is the audio standard like volume for podcasting. So a lot of little things there, and they have like a lower tier version and then a higher tier version. Like the higher tier one, you can record directly out of Skype right into the software. So there's a lot of nice things in there. Like I said, I use Hindenburg the majority of the time, and then I finish in Audacity. I use Audacity to kill the the awkward pauses, so truncate silence and some of that stuff, and the ID3 tags. But the bulk of the mastering of the interview and even the recording of the interviews is done on Hindenburg.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, they do free trials quite often, and once a year they'll do like a deal where you could buy the software for like a penny. So they do different things like that, but it's really nice. Now I wanted to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about your acting career. You've been in a lot of shows that I watched. I saw you on Gotham. I saw you doing the food testing on Elementary. I didn't know you did stuff with the Discovery Channel. You also did some independent films. I want to talk a little bit about your acting career, how you first got started, and what drove you in the direction to not only seek out roles but actively be out there, because I remember you were putting up stuff for shows quite a bit. You've also done some commercial work as well.
Yeah. Well, I started with acting in like elementary school and like middle school, high school. I kind of fell out of it like after high school a bit, but then I was studying film, and then while we were doing like the different like scenes for class, so like I always would, whenever I had the opportunity, I would jump in front of the camera. And then after I graduated, it was it's hard to get like the right people together to like shoot a film. So I started doing more, because auditioning was just something I could just go and do, and I just kind of fell more into being on the other side, being in front of the camera rather than being behind it.
Right.
And I just kind of got back into it that way, and I started like doing background work, and then I started getting back into doing roles again. And I haven't looked into much theater, but more like films and voice acting and things like that is what I've been focusing on.
How does that work with, because a lot of the shows you're doing, like Elementary, Gotham, a lot of those filmed here in New York City in different areas. How does that work for you in terms of auditioning? Like, how do you get your leads? How do you determine if you're a good fit?
Well, for background work, you pretty much just submit, like on casting networks. You create a profile, and they say they're looking for a certain type, so I submit to that. And but a lot of the like roles and stuff was more on backstage, like the independent films I did. But the Discovery Channel was on Actors Connect. There's a website called Actors Connection, where you upload a reel and you send it to. So there's different websites where you can submit your information, and if then the casting looks at like the video or your reel, and then if they think you're a good fit, they call you in to come for the show. So
how did you get the lead role for the short, for the Incognita short?
That was on Backstage, and the interesting thing about that, I was originally the understudy for the role. Like I was going to be like the backup, and they cast another person, but then that person couldn't do it for whatever reason, and then I ended up being the lead for the show. So like originally they asked me the understudy, and I thought, all right, I'll say yes. Like
nice,
because then at least like there's still the chance I could do the lead, and then I ended up doing the lead, so it was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, to get that opportunity and to get yourself out there, you know, you got yourself a nice IMDb credit to boot, which never hurts. Definitely not. How was that experience for you, especially being a lead in a short film? How does that work in terms of preparation, getting into character? What was your process for that?
Well, I tried to think about I tried to just really I guess think who was the character before the movie. Like, he was a philosophy professor, so I tried to, I guess, get into his head, what he was like. He's really passionate about philosophy, all right? Like, why is he what made him want to be a professor? Why, and then so I can relate more to what he's doing. At times, he's very excited when he's teaching on his first day, and then I try to, I guess it was more just trying to, I guess, maybe create a backstory in my head for this character, and also at the same time thinking how I would react, if the certain things that happened to him happened to me. And
did you draw from your time in school?
Did I draw from what?
Did you draw from your time in school when you were in college? Did you pull any old professors that came to mind and draw inspiration from that, or
not so much? I guess it was more how would I be if I were a professor? I guess.
Okay.
I guess that role maybe I played a little bit more as myself, reacting, but with a different life and a different backstory. If I had a different life and I was this guy and I pursued being a philosophy professor instead of what I am pursuing, then how would I react to things?
So you approach the role as if you were walking in that man's shoes.
Yeah.
There you go. That's not a bad way to look at it. But in addition to doing film and TV, you've done some commercial work, and you also did voiceover work. I saw on your reel you had done some voiceover for Batman as Mr. Yellow in Batman: A Phantom Story. How'd that come about?
Oh, that was on the site Casting Call. It was more of a fan project that he was doing for doing an animated Batman series that takes place in the 30s and 40s.
Nice.
It hasn't been released yet, but he showed me the early cuts. So hopefully sometime by the end of this year, it should be out on YouTube. But
awesome.
it was just one line for that, but it was still cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, as a comic book fan, it was cool to read that. I'm like, oh, that's pretty awesome, you know. I did want to circle back. You celebrated your 100th episode of your podcast right before 2019 closed out. How did you feel about that milestone?
Pretty good. And I actually had someone interview me for that episode, and I feel it was cool to I felt in a weird way, I understood my process more through the interview that I did. It was almost I was able to put more into words what the show meant to me, and it felt good to make it to the 100, and I like the timing that to close out the year with that too.
Yeah, your guest list has run the gamut, and when you hit the 100 episode mark, I've been there, and it's an amazing milestone, especially because in this field, you can attest to this as much as I can. But everybody starts a podcast, and there's so many abandoned shows out there, so many people that get the itch, jump in, and then just realize that it's not for them. Did you have any of those moments as you were doing your show? Did you run into that? Did you have any challenges that you felt were kind of making you question your decision to do the show?
I guess maybe figuring out the whole marketing side of it, because like I said, it was very intuitive, my reasons for starting it. So I guess the challenge was putting that intuitive idea and that intuitive drive behind the show into a more logical or more concrete way to say it, into a few words, putting it into a few words, and then knowing how to pitch it to different people. And also, I guess, just also building the audience for a podcast, figuring out where the place is to do that. Because the people I listen to, Joe Rogan and Mark Maron, they're big celebrities and they got famous through other means, and then their podcast got known. So it's hard to I guess I was trying to, the challenge was how to just grow that market from scratch with just the podcasts. And also maybe every once in a while, like the certain interviews that kind of didn't go anywhere, or I didn't really get much like out of the guest. And,
those are the worst.
it kind of made me think, yeah, yeah, where they just give like kind of quick answers and they didn't really elaborate too much. And, I guess that was the challenge. But then, like, I probably had more interviews where I felt like energized afterwards, so yeah, that made up for that. Yeah,
that's a tough part, I think, especially when you're doing an interview series. You kind of have this ideal scenario with a guest, and then they come in and it's like, yeah, no, yeah, I kind of thought about it, and by the time it's done, you feel drained because it almost feels like you were pulling teeth, or you were doing an interrogation, just because you don't feel any chemistry. Did you run into that often sometimes, where you kind of built up this awesomeness and then the guest comes on and you kind of feel let down?
Yeah, definitely, especially with some people I followed on YouTube that seemed really, in their YouTube videos, they seemed very like approachable and they talked a lot about interesting stuff. But then when I interviewed them, it was very like, I don't know, they were more like they didn't want to open up. They were more, their guard was up more, and it wasn't as easy to get them to open up. So, I mean, maybe it's because people like sometimes have a different persona on their YouTube channel that's different than like who they really are, because they're just talking to a camera for a YouTube channel, or it's not always the same. Like if you see someone like on their own show or on their own thing, if you actually sit down and talk to them, it's sometimes a different experience. So.
I think that one of the biggest things, and I wanted to touch on this with you to see if you would agree, if you agree with this statement. A lot of people say that when you're getting into podcasting, or even going out into the professional world for jobs or public speaking, etc., that you should take improv classes. And being someone who's done improv, I'm curious, do you agree with that statement? Do you feel that people should at least take a class or learn at least the fundamentals of improv in order to be a better content creator?
Yes, I do think improv is very helpful for being like more spontaneous, and also like the whole yes and thing of improv is very helpful in life too. Like if you're interviewing somebody and then something just like throws a curveball and it's unexpected, being able to be like, okay, I accept that. Like, let me add something to that. I didn't think, and it definitely is helpful in that way. And there was a meetup group that I recommend called Improv Now. That's actually free. It has like free jams you can go to and just get up on stage, or like $12 classes. So if anybody wants to get into it, that's like an easy way to start getting into it. And it's definitely helpful it was helpful for the acting and for doing the show as well. Just thinking on my feet and not like having an idea in my head, like always of, oh, right, it's going to go this way, because then if it doesn't go this way, then you're kind of at a loss, and you're more open to the different ways something can play out. Then it's easier to kind of go with the flow and keep going with it, even if it's not what you expected.
Yeah, I think, and I've seen it mentioned a few different places. A couple podcasters and personalities I follow talk about how important improv is, and how it would work for, like I said, content creators, but people in business, etc. And I wanted to ask you, especially because you had hands-on experience in that field, and to hear you say that, it just goes to show you that even though many of us, there's not a one-size-fits-all when it comes to content creation and podcasting, especially because some people, they're very comfortable in kind of just following a script and reading off cue cards, etc. But to your point, if you're doing a show and the podcast or the interview just goes off the rails, you kind of want to be able to salvage that and pivot back to make it sound at least somewhat cohesive, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Now, your show, 100 episode mark, you're well over 100 now. In March of this year, you actually secured a spot on Radio Free Brooklyn. I wanted to talk about that. That's pretty big in terms of distribution. How did that come about?
Well, actually, it's appropriate. We were just talking about improv because it actually, at one of the improv events I went to, at the Improv Now group I was talking about, there was the Friday jam they do at the Triple Crown Theater. There's someone from Radio Free Brooklyn is on a team. His name's Will Hasty. I believe he's like a co-host of this. I forget which show it is, but he recommended that I pitch the show to Radio Free Brooklyn, that they take pre-recorded shows that they air. So I pitched it like because of that, and then they accepted it, and I went to the orientation, and then now I'm a part of their network as a weekly pre-recorded show. And so it's kind of interesting, like how one thing leads to the other. Like through the improv, I met somebody that told me about submitting my show to Radio Free Brooklyn, and then I ended up being a part of their network. So
how's that been for audience growth and just reaching new ears?
It's helped a lot. Definitely, I think it's still more like people listen to it like after it airs, because it's on Monday, 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. I know some people have commented and were listening then, but I also I think most of it's like the downloads on the Radio Free Brooklyn app. So it's still like it definitely it's getting it out to more people. And I was thinking about if one day I'll make the transition into doing it live, but I do kind of like being able to edit and doing the pre-recorded a bit. Like that's kind of what I'm used to, but we'll see if one day I want to experiment with doing it live. Like obviously if I had I would have to have a different time slot to do that, but we'll see where it goes.
How's your editing process, and how long does it take you to edit on average one of your shows?
It varies. It depends how much content, how long we got off track, or how long the conversation was. Some of them now I try to keep the conversation to 50 minutes. So unless there's really something that didn't fit or dragged on, or there was an awkward pause, then I'll try to keep the main bulk of the conversation. Then like you said, you add the intro and the outro in the post. And also sometimes I like to add an audio clip of what the person does, or just to add more of a give more of a show more of the person's personality outside of the interview. I guess I mean as long as it's relevant, it's not getting too much off track, or they don't repeat what they say. I usually keep the main bulk of the conversation. It depending on how long, because sometimes certain people they ramble a lot, and we end up going a lot longer than I wanted to go. I mean, and then there's a lot more editing I have to do, and then that takes a lot longer. But I mean, it varies on the episode. Sometimes there's not enough. Sometimes they didn't talk enough, and then I have to add more in the intro and the outro, and then that takes longer. Trying to because it's 59-minute slots for Radio Free Brooklyn, so I have to have it at that. That's added a new challenge. That's while it's been very good, that's but it's a good challenge, because then keeping it in that time frame kind of that helps me. Then I can be kind of more creative in making it fit exactly 59 minutes. So, yeah.
Does Radio Free Brooklyn have any prerequisites with regards to your content? Do they tell you, minus like you just said, the time constraint? Is there a standards and practices they want you to abide by, or do they kind of give you creative control creative control freedoms?
Mainly creative control. The only other thing is I have to do the on-air reads, which take about 5 minutes. So I have to allow time for that too, to read all the on-air reads they want me to say.
Oh, okay. So your sponsor reads.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. Nice. Now, you've the transition to Radio Free Brooklyn, you've had so many different guests. Just out of curiosity, who was a guest that you had that you feel you didn't get enough time with, that you wish you would have had more? Because you said sometimes a conversation gets cut short, but who was a person that you were really vibing with, and for whatever reason you wish that the conversation could have gone on longer, or you would have liked to have done a part 2 with that person? Yeah,
that's a good question.
You can always circle back.
Yeah, I guess it's not coming to me now.
Yeah, I ask because when we do this, especially for as long as we've done this stuff, there's always one or two that just pop in, and you're like, man, I wish I would have asked this, or I wish I could have touched on that, or and then next thing you know, you can't reconnect with that person, or it's even tough to get them back for a second go around. So I always like asking fellow podcasters, who was your white whale? Who'd you wish you could have had more time with? Now, I have to ask, as long as you've been doing this and the diverse group of people you've spoke to thus far, is there anybody who's on your radar that you'd hope to speak to in the near future?
Well, there is. I did want to speak to Jello Biafra, he's pretty famous. He's of this band, the Dead Kennedys, and he's also he's like a political activist, and he's just an interesting guy. But he's hard to get a hold of because he does like a lot of events, and he has a publicist. So that's been someone I've been wanting to talk to. There was this poet, Joy Harjo. She's a Native American poet. That's like she was interviewed on like Oprah, and she does like almost semi-beat poetry, and she wrote like this autobiography that was interesting. I reached out to her, but at the time she was like her. I don't know what they call that person that like answers the email for the person once they get a lot more followers. I guess publicist.
Gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Gatekeeper.
Yeah. So you got and that one said she was caught up with a lot of events too. So
gotcha.
I mean, there's definitely like a lot of people I'm like planning to interview in the future, as the show goes on.
In the shows you've been with, in terms of acting, has there been anybody who you're like, oh man, I'd love to talk to this person that you've shared screen time with? I mean, well, John Hamm seemed like an interesting guy to talk to. I was on the set of Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt with John Hamm. He was in Mad Men, and he was in and also and probably the actress that played Kimmy Schmidt too, Ellie Kemper. There were a lot of interesting people on the show Gotham too. Yeah, there was such a unique cast. Yeah. I was a big Johnny Lee Miller fan, so I liked Elementary. I always felt that he would be a great interview just because it looks like he has so many stories. Oh, is he the one he's the one that plays Sherlock, right? Yep. Yeah. He it was funny. I remember watching this very terrible, I think it was like Dracula 2000, like a really bad horror movie, and he was in it. He played like a vampire hunter. I'm like, oh my God, it's Sherlock. And like my wife walks in and she sees and she's like, oh my God, he looks so young. I'm like, wow, he's been in the game for a while. So I just based on that, I've kind of felt that he would have some awesome stories. Oh, nice. Yeah. I'm not sure what I've seen. I probably have seen him in stuff. I just don't remember. I didn't watch too much Elementary, but I worked on it like a couple times. Yeah, when the episode where you were the food critic, they were doing a voiceover. Was him, Detective Gregson, and the other detective, and they were like standing behind you, and it was funny because I remember that when you mentioned the clip on social, and I was like, oh, there he is, it was just funny, seeing it, and then just watching the monologue with Sherlock and Detective Bell and Gregson, and I was just like, wow, this is really funny, the way that they shot that, you're in frame, it's really good, and I'm sure when you look at that stuff, especially when you're building your reel, you're like, oh, this is good, I'm right here, I'm in focus, I look great on camera. Yeah. Yeah, and then and the one guy was in that episode who was playing the scientist guy who was giving the food. I know I've seen him in other movies. He was in this Shaun of the Dead type movie where he was fighting vampires. I've seen him in more comedic films too, but I think on that he was playing the straight man. He was playing the villain in that episode. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I feel like I have seen that guy someplace. You're probably right. I'm gonna have the IMDb after we wrap just to see. I'm curious. All right, so we usually have a segment on the show that we like to call the hot seat. It's just a series of rapid fire questions of different things, just real casual that we like to go through right before we wrap things up. So I'd like to go through it with you, go through some questions, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Okay. All right, so what are 3 mobile apps you can't live without? The Mail. All right. Voice Recorder, because that's the one I was using to record with. Got it. And WhatsApp, because that's people use that to contact me about important things. Or wow. And also there's no long distance. I think you can call people without the long distance. Oh, that's pretty cool. I've never used it, so that's a first. All right. Yeah. What's the first place you go to when you open your phone or your computer? My mail. I guess I check my email, or I
I check social. I mean, that's pretty common. I check social media just to see like who tried to contact me and stuff like that. I check Google News.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Nice. Do you have your own cultivated set of alerts for Google News, or do you just pop in to just read what's going on?
I do have like a cultivated. I mean, I try to follow a wide range of different outlets so I can get like different perspectives on the news.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
When you edit your podcast, do you edit in silence or do you play music while you work?
I don't play music. Sometimes I play like a computer game that like I can go in and out of. Like I just by pressing the window, so I can kind of do something as I'm listening and editing. But only if it's a game where I can press the window button and go in and out of it.
Nice. What are you playing?
Recently, Divinity: Original Sin.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. What was the last book you read?
Fallout 4 was another one where I could go in and out.
Oh, a lot of our guys love Fallout. Fallout's a wild game. I tried to get into it, and I'm like, I can't invest this much hours into this game. Oh, man. What was the last book you read?
The last book was The Art of Communicating by Thich Nhat Hanh. I listened to the audiobook of it.
Oh, okay.
It was he's like a Buddhist monk, and it was about like listening compassionately to people.
Nice.
And,
did he narrate the book?
He didn't narrate the book. There was somebody else who narrated it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, there's a lot of helpful advice. It's good for like interviewing, communication, media. I mean, it's helpful probably for whatever field you're in.
Very cool. What's the last TV show you watched?
Last TV show, I finished. Right now, I'm watching through Mad Men because it goes off the air like June 10th. But the last one I finished, I think, was BoJack Horseman.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Such a crazy and strange show. I was like, what the hell? As I started watching, I'm like, oh, this is pretty damn funny.
Yeah. Like it starts off really wacky, but then like it gets like really deep and like dark at times too, which I thought was neat. Like I hadn't seen a show that did that before. Like it had the really absurd and then like the really like dark too.
Yeah, it had shades of like Ren and Stimpy, if you're familiar with that cartoon.
Oh yeah, from way back. I guess that got kind of dark.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely did. What's an item that you've purchased that's less than $100 that's made your life easier or more enjoyable?
Well, the iOS mic I mentioned is also, I guess the iOS mic, and also like this FM thing I have for like putting music on in the car. It's like a
FM transmitter.
It's like nice. Yeah.
Okay. Touching on the toys aspect of things, what was your favorite toy or collectible as a kid?
I liked like Batman action figures, like ones especially from like the animated series.
Oh,
like,
those were so
I had, like,
good.
The Clayface toy, yeah.
That cartoon is just a masterpiece. Even still, it holds up so well.
Yeah, it's actually kind of similar in tone to like the Christopher Nolan films. Like it still has that kind of like I guess dark.
Yep, dark grittiness,
serious tone to it. Yeah. I remember I really liked that the animated movie they did. It was called like the Phantom Menace.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. That's Mask of the Phantasm.
Mask of the Phantasm.
Yep, that's right. That movie was ahead of its time. The villain was really good because it was kind of like a tragic villain. They did a great job with that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. If you could have dinner with somebody, alive or dead, who would it be, and what would you want to eat with them?
It's a good question.
Oh, you're stumped.
Stumped, yeah.
All good. It's all right.
Yeah.
All right. Last segment of the show, we like to close things out with, just to give value to our listeners. We call it Reach One, Teach One. We usually tailor a question just with regards to the guest to give our listeners something to learn about or aspire to. In your case, someone with such a diverse career path, from acting to writing to podcasting, what's a good piece of advice you'd give to someone? I'll do it in a two-part question. What advice would you give to someone who is interested in starting a podcast?
Just do it, I guess. Just even if you don't really know like what you're doing at first, just do it, and you'll learn and you'll get better as you do it.
Nice.
And don't be afraid of criticism, and like if you think and listening to constructive criticism, and always be learning, always be getting better at what you do.
All right. Now, if someone was interested in pursuing a career in acting, whether it's movies or television, what's one actionable piece of advice that they could take with them after hearing our conversation? I guess it's similar. I guess the same thing. Just always, keep learning, keep trying to get better. I guess be open to criticism, and network, meet people who want to do. Because I guess that helps a lot too. Like knowing people who might be working on a project, and only do it like if you really enjoy it, and all that. Awesome. All right. Lastly, before we wrap things up, if people wanted to catch up with you, follow your work, where could they keep up with you? Well, I'm on Instagram as SKNEESE 1989, Kneese 1989. You can also on Spotify and iTunes, BSing with Sean K. On Facebook, BSing with Sean K. There's also the BSing with Sean K Facebook group. And you can find some of my episodes on Radio Free Brooklyn. But like the older episodes are not on Radio Free Brooklyn, just the episodes where I started with them. Gotcha. But like the older ones are like on my main website, SeanKneese.com, or on bsingwithseank.blogspot.com, or Spotify and iTunes. Awesome. Very much. That's very good stuff. Links for that will be in the show notes for this episode, folks. Sean, thank you for taking the time to share the toys and tech of your trade. Thank you for having me. Huge thanks to Sean Kneese for sharing not only his personal story, but just a lot of actionable advice, as well as information and tools that can be useful for you if you are embarking on your own podcasting journey or you're looking to get into acting. We're going to make sure to include links to everything that Sean outlined in his interview, as well as where you can keep up with Sean, plus all of the usual links for everything regarding RageWorks as well will be in the show notes for this episode. I just want to close out this week's episode by letting everybody know, as we said when the show started, we're back to a regular publishing schedule. If you enjoy what we're doing, it would really mean a lot to me if you took a moment and reviewed the show on iTunes. If you're consuming it via iTunes, it not only helps us place higher in the algorithm, but it just allows us to utilize social proof to get other awesome guests on future episodes of the podcast. So if you got a moment, please go on iTunes, give us a review. We would really, really appreciate it. For those of you that have asked, we're still releasing Toys and Tech of the Trade on YouTube for the handful of people that are still consuming it that way and watching it at work. We are still putting episodes there. I know some of you have asked about putting episodes on IGTV. It's a little bit more of a lengthy process to edit the podcast for that. It's something that we've considered, but we haven't totally dismissed it as of yet. For now, you can find this podcast as well as all of our other shows on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, and any of your favorite podcasting platforms. And of course, an audio version of this episode will be on YouTube as well. If you'd like to be a guest on a future episode of Toys and Tech of the Trade, feel free to email me, rich@rageworks.net, or visit the RageWorks network and fill out the guest form on the site. Let us know which show you'd like to be on, and someone from the RageWorks team will reach out to set that up. Everybody's story needs to be heard, and if you got an awesome story that you think would bring value to our audience, by all means, do not hesitate to reach out. We definitely like to share different stories, different creators, different entrepreneurs, and just stuff to bring our audience value. So before you wonder if you're going to be a good fit, send us an email, hit me up, and we'll figure it out. One last thing before we wrap things up, of course, you can also find us on Poddit, PODDIT.com. Poddit is a service that connects potential guests with podcasters, whether it's us or another podcaster. It's a great way to get your message out there. If you're looking for other shows to be on, we have a great profile on there, and there's a lot of other great creators and podcasters there as well. You can check out our interview with Brent Basham from Poddit on an earlier episode of Toys and Tech of the Trade. So definitely use that service if you're looking to be a guest on other episodes on other podcasts besides ours. It's a great service, and there's no sort of commission or affiliate or anything else for that. Just a service that we like and we wanted to recommend. And as always, a disclaimer: any links that we do share related to our guests at times may be affiliate links. Full transparency as always. Affiliate links, if you click them, it costs you nothing, but we may receive a small commission, which allows us to improve our gear, get you better guests, and overall provide you a better experience. So just wanted to close things out and make sure to include that disclaimer, because obviously full transparency, something we pride ourselves in, and we wanted to keep you guys informed. All right, that's going to wrap up this week's episode of Toys and Tech of the Trade. Join us in 2 weeks for another awesome guest. And that's it. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Peace. Toys and Tech of the Trade is part of the Rageworks podcast network, your source for rants about gaming, entertainment, and the works. Visit us at rageworksnetwork.com.
With the new iPhone SE for less than $100 at Metro, you rule. It's the most affordable iPhone on the #1 brand in prepaid. So whether you're studying online or FaceTiming.
Hey, Mom.
Hi, dear. The iPhone SE has all you need. Switch to Metro and get the iPhone SE for $99.99 after rebate redemption and 6 months of service with AutoPay. Metro by T-Mobile. Rule your day. Limit 1 per account/household. Requires port and ID validation. Not valid for numbers currently on the T-Mobile network or active on Metro in past 90 days. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Right now, switch your family to T-Mobile and get 4 lines for $25 a line with AutoPay and 5G access included on America's largest 5G network. So don't wait. Get unlimited and nationwide 5G access for the whole family for just $25 a line. Visit a T-Mobile store or T-Mobile.com today.
Plus taxes and fees. Customers may notice lower speeds and further reduction if using over 50 gigs a month due to data prioritization. Video at 480p. Unlimited while on our network. Qualifying credit and 4+ lines required. Capable device required for 5G. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain features. See T-Mobile.com.